The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Hump Day.
It's a day that will live in infamy.
It's a day, and we are now officially less than a week away from the election.
Yes, we are. We are
So,
6 days away.
Everybody get ready. Mark it on your calendar. Set all your alarms. Make sure you go out and vote, because that's the only way that we can control our destiny.
That's it. You know, it was interesting because yesterday in my mailbox, I opened up my mailbox, and what do I have in the mail? I have a Kathy Ann Viveris card, and it's got the sticker attached for a write-in candidate. It says her name and it has her address.
That's in case you can't spell.
No, I think it's, because I remember a long time ago when write-in candidates would actually be out and have people out in front of the polls, and they'd be handing out the stickers. So,
Well, and I'm not sure how accurate, as I said, we tell you if we know exactly, and it's been corroborated, but I got a call saying that they were told that somebody called me and actually said, oh, I hear they're going to be giving out stickers at the polls. I said, well, they can't be inside the physical polls.
no, they got to be 150 feet away.
So I said they have to be away from the polls, and if they do that, so I'm sure they'll have people at the polls too, the same old faces, but
Yeah, have all the J's
I
old
didn't get
people.
a mail. Maybe she saved the postage, sending it. to
Well,
me.
I can tell that she got the addresses from the elections list, because you pay $15, you get that from the elections office, and I could tell it was the elections list because the company that printed them and sent them out for her must have used that list per se, because I know another company in the city which uses the water department billing for some of the mailings. Everyone uses, some use the tax filing, some use the water department billing, some use the elections
Then you
office.
have those programs that track voters.
Yes,
too.
exactly.
And for the Republicans and the Democrats, both have their own version of that.
Yes.
Of that voter tracker, which you have to actually be.
You have to be a member of the party. And a candidate for office.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
And you
a
have to
delegate.
pay for it too.
Well, no, you don't have to pay for it, because when I ran in the state for the state rep's office, the state party gave me access to it. What's called Voter Vault, and I could key in anyone's name in my district, and it would tell me when they voted, how many times they voted, how many elections they missed, all of that. So, and there are companies out there like Nation Builder which do that as well, and you pay them a fee every month, and so.
Well, I think the last time I went in, it was the candidate, but it was in a nonpartisan election, and they wanted some money, but they went through some other group who already had it, 'cause they had a voter base and whatever. But the reality is, it doesn't matter. We've already talked about our positions on write-ins of any kind. They only serve to actually, and again, to reiterate that, to me, they undermine the process, because we all complained about the charter and the plurality election, and write-in candidates make a final election a plurality election.
Exactly.
And that's just not right, because all they serve to do is muddy the water.
And I have to say something while you're talking about this, because I've gotten complaints and phone calls from people saying that we are not being fair to candidates, because specifically Kathy Ann, but we're not being fair to the candidates because they're not able to get on the show. That is not the case. Since before the primary, I have reached out to many, 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 many people and asked them to be on the show. None of them returned a call, or they returned a call saying, I can't be there at that time because I'm at work and I don't get out till 4 and I can do it like at 5. And obviously, if we're broadcasting at 11, as we are now, it's not possible to be here at 5 to do the show. So we're very fair on offering this to people, but this year nobody wanted to take up. Not a lot of people wanted to take us up on it.
You know, CJ, listen, I think we made it pretty damn clear on the last show. We have been fair. People have seen the way we bring them up here and let them speak. We let Jazel go on for half an hour.
That's right.
We didn't cross-examine them. We didn't call them on anything. That's up to the people who were running against them, as far as we were concerned. That's the format we decided on. Every single legitimate, and I am gonna amplify that. And if you're saying I'm not fair, well, guess what? Life isn't fair. As Pythagoras once said, man is the measure of all things. We offered every single candidate who took out nomination papers, went through the process, established themselves as a candidate, we gave them the opportunity. And as we said on the last show, we had Jazel Correa and Paul Coogan on the show. They got their half an hour. It wasn't a debate forum. They got to get into their platforms in depth. So don't accuse us of not being fair. Kathy Ann Viveris is not being fair to the process. As we said on the last show, if she truly wanted to be a candidate, a real candidate, she should have pulled her papers. She would have been on the show. You don't pull them out at the 11th hour, try to become a third-party candidate, and then say you're not a candidate, but you really are a candidate, then life isn't fair. I think we covered that pretty well on the show. So case closed. And if you don't like it, tough. as you said about that show that was going to have her on, that's their platform. This is ours.
That's right.
I think that our position, we made it very, very clear. I agree. She's not a candidate, because if we allow her on a show, she's not a legitimate candidate. She didn't pull nomination papers. She circumvented the system. She didn't run in a primary. If she would have been one of the final two candidates, she would have been on the show. She wasn't. She couldn't have made it through the primary, and she knew it. So now she's going to grab all Jazel people who are holding her signs, and all her sign locations of where Jazel was, and let's call a spade a spade. She's not a real candidate. She's not getting any time as far as I'm concerned. And if you think that's unfair, tough.
Yeah.
I don't care. To me, it's unfair of her to try to gum up this election, to try to screw this election up.
Well, you know,
So
it's interesting that you mentioned that it's all Jazel's people supporting her, because, you know, that's very obvious. And that's okay. So what will happen is, if, let's just say, for some odd act of God or, you know, wishful thinking, Kathy Ann Viveris got elected as mayor. That would be a continuation.
6 times the job.
The 6 times are going to be the charm. That would be a continuation of the Jazel Correa administration.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening here is they're turning around and they're saying, no, it won't be Kathy Ann's administration. And Kathy Ann said very clearly that she doesn't want to lose the advancements that the previous administration has had, and she wants to keep moving the city forward. Well, now they're turning around saying if Paul Coogan's elected, that's going to be a rehash of the Flanagan administration. And we recall Flanagan, but that'll be a rehash of the Flanagan administration, because someone like Ann O'Neill Souza, who's the campaign manager, they're already saying she's going to be the chief of staff. And they're saying that they're going to bring back Kenny Fiola, and they got all these rumors going around, and God forbid you speak against anyone. And it just gets to be ridiculous. There's more debating going on social media than any candidate ever does. Right now you have both candidates, Paul and Kathy Ann, taking jabs against each other, posting statements every day about, you know, one person will say this, and this about the other, and then they'll turn around and say this, and this about them, and it goes back and forth. Hey, that's a debate. There you go. There's your debate.
Look, we said this would get kind of dirty. They're taking jabs. There's a lot of misinformation, and it's up to you to do your homework.
Well, yeah, they're calling Paul a racist now.
Yeah, well, we covered that. That's ridiculous. I mean, look, you're saying a racist because for the first time, when I went to Durfee, there was one black student in the entire school. And I graduated in one of the biggest graduating classes in the history of Durfee. And I'm not talking about in the senior class. I'm talking about in the entire school.
Right.
The entire high school, we had one black student. So you don't think as an educator and as someone, as we said, it deals with a lot of the way the education is structured, about grants, etc. You don't think it's important to understand, not only for our school system, but for our city, that this city, the demographics have changed.
Significantly changed.
Significantly.
Yes.
We went from one black student to where people of color and ethnicity that are not the mainstream outnumber. When we didn't even qualify, that shows how undereducated the people who make these statements are. Years ago, when we had the programs to give preferential hiring, Fall River was exempt because we had so few minorities in the entire city.
Exactly.
Do you think that isn't germane? Do you think that isn't something that someone should say? That's not racist, that's just the fact. When they were hiring in Boston, where they were mandated to hire people with 70s, and they actually dropped it one year to 35 for a passing mark to allow minorities to get on. They had to hire somebody with a 35 over somebody with a 100. Is that fair? That's reverse discrimination. There's still acrimony at the Boston Fire Department over that, because there are some third and fourth and fifth generation firefighters in the Boston Fire Department whose brothers couldn't get on a job with 100.
Right.
While somebody did with a 35. So you can think it's fair. They don't think it's fair. I'm not going to debate that issue, but to say that when somebody makes a statement like that, which is a relevant fact that you have to look at as a mayor, not only in the school, but in the entire city,
right,
that's absurd. That is absolutely absurd to try to get, they're trying anything to characterize the opponent, and that's politics. That's why I tell you, people, you know how you can tell a politician's lying? Their lips are moving.
That's it.
And I mean, that's the whole problem. And that segues into another one you and I were discussing. Apparently, someone who I know, and I made a call to him this morning, Alan, somebody was talking about Paul Coogan taking a salary, not taking a salary.
If he could take a salary,
if he didn't take a salary, and he was started to quote the law. But unfortunately, that law is about, and I'm not going to read it because here it is. This is only one section. These are all the pages, and my printer ran out of ink, so I'm not going to read it.
That's how many pages there were.
I'm going to have to read it off my phone, the opinion. But as usual, we will go to the ends of the earth to try to get an accurate opinion. The individual who wrote it was approaching it from the Alan Sylvia state rep perspective, and because one of his relatives works for Alan. Well, it's not applicable, and you guys can look it up. And Massachusetts General Law, type in the chapter, it'll take you to mass.gov, and it'll bring you into the site with MGLs. MGL Chapter 32, Sections 91 and 91A. Well, 91A are the conditions for people who retire under a disability retirement. 91 are people who go off on normal superannuation. So, obviously, we've dealt with this law before in the case of Alan Sylvia, who was a city employee. We couldn't touch Joe Macy and their hours because they talked about the hours restrictions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But okay, let me give you what I've gotten on this. And I we've dealt with this. I've dealt with this law before. But as usual, we go the extra mile here. So I got a legal opinion from the retirement board's lawyer, because I knew there was a section in it everybody overlooks in 91. So this is what he wrote. He goes over the law. As I indicated earlier, said I have a meeting this morning, but you need a quick answer. 91, and it's small a, that's subsection A of chapter 91, not 91A. 91A is a next, it's a law, it's a separate statute that deals with disability. So don't confuse that. This is 91, the first subsection of 91. It states in part, this is the important part, no person while receiving a pension, disability pension, or retirement allowance from the Commonwealth or from any county, city, and it goes on, you can read it. Now, as you read that paragraph, it drives you crazy because it talks about judges, it talks about this, then we get down about, I don't know, 10 lines, 15 lines. This is the big one, and it's bold-faced in the email. Except, upon his return and restoration, okay, to office, and this, again, in boldface, you continue to read, for service in a public office to which he has thereafter, after he retired, been elected by direct vote of the people. So what the attorney basically said was, and we all know it, he basically said that the legislature has exempted elected officials from post-retirement earning restrictions. So the politicians took care of the politicians. So if you get elected as a politician, you got a pension, you can keep the whole pension. So bottom line is, the only restriction, and we know that because we dealt with it with Linda Pereira, the only restriction is if if the elected official retired ran for the same office, which he did, city council, the exemption does not apply until 1 full year has passed since the retirement. That's why Linda Pereira had to take a year without pay. So the reality is, and I don't know what Paul Coogan's going to do, because that's Paul Coogan's decision. But let me tell you what the legal opinion from our attorney, who was an attorney for about over 100 retirement boards. He is one of the top, if not the top, public sector pension attorneys in the state. That's the only thing he does, is pension law. He's won numerous cases and litigations about interpretations of law. The law is pretty clear. Of course it's clear, because the only time the legislature makes it clear is when they're protecting themselves and other elected officials. Screw the average guy. Guy retires, you can only work certain hours, you can only take a certain amount of money, otherwise you're going to pay your pension back. They get elected, they can take the pension, they can take the salary, they can do anything they want. I'm not saying what he's going to do. Let's make that very clear. I am not saying that Paul Coogan is going to take it, not take it, take half, take part of one and part of the other. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. I want to straighten out the misconception, because there have been people on there quoting the law, and that law is a very, very long law. You'll probably fall asleep 4 or 5 times before you get through it, and even after you read it, you won't understand what you read, because it goes on to it separates judges, and it's a difficult read at best, even if you don't mind reading laws, and I don't, but this is a very complex law because it deals with all kinds of special circumstances and stuff like that. And, you know, if you're appointed by this, if you accept, if you were duly elected, blah, blah, blah. But that's the reality. The reality is, this is the reality. Paul Coogan will be duly elected if he wins. And if he's a duly elected mayor, he could take his pension and he could take his salary. What he does, who knows? The only time he couldn't take his salary or his pension, there would be restrictions, would be if he got a job as the superintendent of schools or something like that. Because he was back in the school department. Or as a school teacher, or a vice principal. So, the reality is if he gets his own job, but even then there's exceptions. We talked about the Braintree chief who restricted people's retirements, and then his mayor allowed him to retire as police chief, get 100% of his pay, and get 100% of his retirement. So he gave him the same exemptions politicians got. So again, we see about, is it fair? Is life fair? No. But listen, we got a week to go. It's going to get fast and furious now. There's going to be misinformation, mud balls, everything thrown around for the next couple of days, and you know, the keyboard commandos are going to be going crazy. So remember, take everything you read with a grain of salt and do some research. So that's what I got on that one, CJ. I know you and I discussed this at length last night. So,
Mom, get me the hot pockets. I'm being a badass on
right.
Facebook.
You know, and don't go on, don't type things in that people look. And I know the guy did it in good faith. He was attempting to clarify it. I know the individual.
Yep.
But like I said, you guys, please. We always encourage you to check us. Go on, MGL, Chapter 32, Section 91.
Sub A.
Subsection of 91. Don't go to 91A. That's because it starts out, this is for people on disability retirements. This is the one for all retirements, fundamentally, and that exemption. So that's the reason there's a different set of circumstances for people on disability, because then they're getting a pension, blah, blah, you know. But you have to read the law. You have to be a lawyer. Even though I knew that section existed, I wanted a clarification from our attorney, and I got it, because I don't want to say that my interpretation was, this is my interpretation. That was my interpretation, but I wanted to make sure that our lawyer would support it if I said, well, I think this is the way it's supposed to be, and it is. And oh, by the way, another little caveat here, so you know, about reporting income. Since it doesn't apply, he can take the whole thing. It really doesn't apply. But people who have restrictions, they are obligated by law to report their earnings and how many hours they worked to the treasurer by the law. And I'm sure that there is few people working in City Hall right now who aren't reporting their earned income and stuff anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they're not in the Fall River Retirement Board, because we did hold the people who were in the Fall River Retirement. Alan Sylvia does a very good job. Initially, he got in and he was not clear about what rules. And he went in and he talked to the executive director, then Christine Tetrol, who straightened them out. And Alan does everything right according to the book. Everything, he dots all the I's, he crosses all the T's. And, you know, but we check. And so did Mike Haw. Mike Haw submitted his hours to us for review periodically. And so we do check on the people in our system to make sure they're adhering to the law. But we can't talk about people who are in the state retirement system or the county retirement system. So, but I just wanted everybody to know that's the statute.
Or even the teachers' retirement system.
Yeah, or even the teachers, that's
Which,
right.
Yes, the teachers are in a separate retirement system.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
A lot of people
even
don't know that.
Even some teachers don't know it.
Exactly.
Because actually our new executive director used to work in Quincy before he came down here. And when we were discussing this issue, because obviously I called him to call a lawyer and get the opinion, and he did so, he said when he was up in Quincy, he had a couple school teachers walk in and say, oh, I want to know about my retirement. And he went, well, where do you work? They went, we work in Quincy High School. He goes, you're not in his system. They were in the system for 30 years. They didn't even know what system they're in. And I know that because I know guys who were in the fire department that didn't worry about their retirement till about a week and a half before they retired. Then they'd come in and go, oh, what am I getting 80%? And they didn't even know there were options, option A, B, C, D, etc. So they had no idea about the system. So I guess the moral to that story is if you're a public employee, don't wait till you got 32, 35, or 40 years in to go check on your retirement.
Yeah.
You may get a rude awakening.
It's interesting because again, we go out there, we get the information, we check them, we double check them, we get the opinions from legal counsel. We do all of that. And when you try to, like I've tried to correct people on social media in regards to Paul and his pension, and I've generalized it, not said it's Paul, but I've said when elected to office, you get to keep both your pension and your retirement, unless it's a disability pension, because that's a different ruling.
Yeah.
And they still, well, he said he was going to give it up. Maybe he did say he was going to give it up. I don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Who knows? I said, but that's the decision Paul's got to make. Or whoever the elected official may be, that's the decision you have to make. It's not one that I have to make because it's not my retirement. So,
well, yeah, as you said, CJ, and as I tried to clarify, we're not telling you what he's going to do.
Exactly.
As you said, well, I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't know what promises he made because, frankly, I didn't vote on his promise to what he was going to do with his retirement. Because the irony is that the people that worked with me had restrictions. It's always bothered me that the politicians, we talked about a double standard. That gets us back to what we always talk about, preferential treatment for politicians.
right.
Paul earned his pension in the school department. He worked there. He went to work every day. He didn't work part-time for 5 or 6 years and then tried to grab a fatter pension like a few people we know, and one of them's running as a write-in.
Exactly.
So the fact is that, he went in, he put in the time, he showed up for work, he earned his pension. Now he became an elected official. Is he going to avail himself of that little extra cherry that the politicians gave themselves? Who knows? But that's not, to me, the issue. The core issue is, again, look at what we're telling you. The Pals in Boston took care of themselves again. They exempted themselves so they could double dip. Everybody complains about double dippers, but the people that are making your laws
Are the ones doing
double dip, triple dip, quadruple dip, give themselves stipends every day, yet on a local level, all we hear about is complaints.
Plus, our politicians in Boston gave themselves a $40,000, $50,000 a year raise.
Yeah.
Hey, why not? What a big deal.
Nobody's minding a store.
They don't remember that Black Friday, do they?
Halloween.
Halloween
night, yeah.
Halloween.
We're on the eve of that Halloween massacre.
That's
when
right.
They wrote them, but that's what politicians do. In those days, we had to approve the raises.
That's right.
So what did they do? They took it out of our hands. We give ourselves raises. Nobody's going to say about it. We slide it right under the door. Nobody knows until after the fact. But guess what? We can't change it again because we have to go and take a constitutional amendment. The judges they appoint will fight us tooth and nail because the judges have got special circumstances.
And honestly,
Pals do.
Under the policy that we have, we can't issue a constitutional amendment. We still need approval from the elected officials.
That's right. Which is, again, the fox is minding the hen house.
As usual.
Like in our charter. Hey, everybody. Enjoy. We hope we clarified something for you. And your guess is as good as mine what he's going to do, but that's not what's relevant. What's relevant is, do you want a change in government? And if you
to get
do,
that change, you got to vote.
vote.
Have a great day. We'll see you on Friday.